Remember the last time a bunch of guests came to your house? The new crockery set comes out. Your mother starts preparing 4, 5, 6 items that are usually never made in that house, and your father starts to laugh at jokes that aren't even funny to begin with. So, what exactly is going on here? Why is everybody so calm, so polite, so eager to please? And when the guest leaves, everything goes back to normal. The crockery set goes back to its place. Your mother goes back to her daily chores, and your father goes back to the person he was before the guest came in. Is this all a facade? An act? Are we fake? And a lot of Indians never want to admit this because admitting this would lead to something uncomfortable. The fact that the people who are supposed to love us unconditionally make strangers feel more loved than us. This isn't just your family or my family. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. This pattern is so deeply embedded in our culture that we no longer question it. We don't even acknowledge it. So today we're going to learn why this happens and how this affects our society. 1. The performance of goodness. In Indian homes, hospitality is not just a habit. It's a performance, an elaborate one. And this performance is directly tied to your identity. From a young age, we're taught this phrase, Atithi Devo Bhava. This is a Sanskrit phrase which means that the guest is like God. It's metaphorical, symbolic, which means that you're supposed to take care of your guests, make them feel like family. But there are a lot of people who take it to the extremes, where everything starts to feel controlled, curated, almost rehearsed. Because it's not just about politeness, it's about presenting a version of your family that is socially acceptable, respected, honored. Hospitality in this context is not driven by the genuine care for the guest. It is rather driven by the need to be seen as a good family, a family that has values. Because in Indian societies, a reputation is not built privately, it is built socially. It lives in the eyes of relatives, neighbors, community members, people who observe, judge, and silently rank you. So when a guest enters a house, he's no longer a guest, he's audience. Now in our minds, we think that these people are gonna judge us on how clean our house is, how well behaved our children are, how generous the food is, and how warm the conversation feels. All of it becomes a signal. Now this signal decides where we stand in this invisible social hierarchy of our country. This is why even families struggling financially will go out of their way to serve elaborate meals. This is why mothers exhaust themselves preparing dishes no one in the house even eats regularly. This is why fathers suddenly become more expressive, more patient, more socially charming than usual. Because in that moment, it's no longer about comfort, it's all about image. And in a collectivist society like ours, image feels like a matter of survival. But there's always a hidden cost to this. When goodness becomes something you perform for outsiders, it slowly stops being something that you practice internally. Why? Because performance needs energy, and you can't be performing all the time. So what happens? When you come offline, it is usually your family who faces the brunt of your rudeness, of your apathy, of your anger. So our good behavior is just simply redirected away from the people who don't contribute to your public image. Because the people who see you for who you are every single day, they stop becoming part of the performance. They see the raw version of you. It's almost like they're backstage. They see the exhaustion, the irritation, the impatience, and over time this mutates into a silent hierarchy of worth. The guest gets the best version of you and the family gets the rest. This is why a child can watch their parent be incredibly kind, respectful, and attentive to outsiders, and then feel confused when the same behavior is absent at home. It feels inconsistent, it feels unfair, almost deceptive. But from a parent's perspective, this feels normal because this is what was taught to them by their parents and their parents before them. They've learned that goodness is not something that you embody privately. It is something that you display in public, in front of other people. But when no one's watching, there's no need to do that. Why waste your energy like that? There's no audience, am I right? And slowly this belief becomes automatic. We don't question it, we don't notice it, we just let it continue, generation after generation, until one day someone in the family starts to feel it. Not as a cultural value, but as a burden, as a personal wound. And we gotta ask ourselves an honest question. If kindness only appears when somebody's watching, was it ever really kindness to begin with? 2. Family as a safe dump. There's a pattern that a lot of people experience but very few rarely name it. People outside your house get your politeness, and people inside your house get your exhaustion. None of this is random, it's structural. Because in many Indian households, family is not just a place of love, it's a place of emotional unloading. Think about how behavior changes across spaces. Outside, there are consequences. So obviously you filter your words, you choose them carefully. You manage your tone, you suppress your irritation, and you behave like a good boy or a good girl. Because outside, if you cross that line and started being too honest, you're gonna lose your respect. You're gonna lose reputation, even opportunity. But at home, there's no such line. Your family is supposed to stay, no matter how you behave, no matter how you talk to them, no matter how you treat them. You start to treat your home as a place where there are no consequences. And this is how, in Indian households, you start to see something called emotional immunity. A space where you can drop your mask completely. Frustration from work gets unleashed at home. Stress from finances gets unleashed at home. Disappointment, anger issues, ego bruises, and it doesn't happen gently either. It's always explosive. Sometimes there's sharp words that if you said these things outside, somebody's gonna punch you in the face. And slowly your family members adapt. And over time, this creates an unspoken rule within the family. Some become the ones who absorb, the emotional shock absorbers. A lot of the times this is usually the mother, sometimes it's the father, but it can be anybody honestly. They learn to read moods, avoid triggering reactions, and they simply just adjust themselves to the environment. And they don't do it because they're weak. They do it because they feel like it's their responsibility, because they've been trained to maintain peace at any cost. And slowly it becomes normalized. The outbursts are dismissed as stress. The emotional dumping becomes family behavior. Now we gotta acknowledge something here. Just because somebody can handle your worst doesn't necessarily mean that they deserve to receive it. We gotta stop taking our families for granted. This idea that family will tolerate, my family will understand, doesn't necessarily have to be the case all the time. Because tolerance over time erodes respect. Because when you consistently give your least controlled self to the people closest to you, you're sending a message. Even if you don't intend to. They will stay, no matter what. And while that may be true externally, internally there's a change. Distance. Not physical distance, emotional distance. Conversations become surface level. Expressions become guarded. Vulnerability disappears. People here learn that being open doesn't bring comfort. It risks becoming another outlet for someone else's stress. This is why more people strangely feel more relaxed around strangers than around family members. With strangers, you're careful, but you're also more respected. But at home, you're also taken for granted. And that trade-off leaves a mark. Because the place that you once thought to be the safest starts feeling like the place where you have to brace yourself the most. And the most dangerous part in all of this is nobody calls it out. Because from the outside, it doesn't look like abuse. It looks normal. And normal doesn't necessarily mean harmless. It simply means that this bullshit has been going on for such a long time that people have stopped giving a about that. 3. The scarcity of warmth. In many Indian households, love is present, but warmth is not. Because in these environments, love is expressed through responsibility, not emotion. Food is served, fees is paid, and needs are met. But something is missing. Affection. There are very few words of appreciation. Almost no casual expression of something like, I'm proud of you, I'm there for you, I'm glad you're here. And it is not because this affection doesn't exist, but it is because we treat it like a limited resource, something that must be controlled, rationed, measured, and used carefully. This belief runs deep. There are a lot of parents who think that too much affection will make their children loose, entitled, even disrespectful. That if love is given freely, the discipline will collapse. So affection becomes conditional, and it appears after achievement, after obedience, after meeting expectations. It is earned, not given. And even when it is given, it is often indirect, in the form of your favorite dish, an extra serving in your plate without any eye contact, and concern disguised as irritation. Why didn't you eat properly? Why are you always on your phone? Take care of your health. To an outsider, this will often feel like control. But beneath the surface, it is care. But it is a type of care that has never learned how to express itself openly. Why? Because the generation before them didn't do it either. And over time, it creates an environment where warmth feels rare, unpredictable, almost accidental. So you don't grow up expecting affection. You grow up noticing it whenever it slips through. A rare compliment becomes memorable. A small gesture feels unusually significant. A moment of warmth stays with you for years. And because it didn't happen enough, something subtle begins to form inside a child. A kind of emotional math. If I do well, I will be seen. If I behave right, I will be valued. If I meet expectations, I might be appreciated. And slowly, your sense of worth starts attaching itself to performance. As a result, you don't feel valued for existing. You feel valued after achieving something. And that belief doesn't stay with you just in your childhood. It follows you. It follows you everywhere. In friendships, in relationships, in your self-image, the way you see yourself, everything. You start over-explaining your worth. You start over-giving to feel secure. And you start overthinking whether you've done enough to deserve care. Because somewhere deeper inside, warmth was never a baseline. It was a reward. And rewards can be taken away. Parents weren't withholding warmth because they didn't care. They were simply repeating a system where survival mattered more than emotional expression, where discipline ensured stability, where softness and affection is seen as a weakness, while love was assumed, not spoken, not expressed. And in that system, children learn to survive emotionally, but they don't always feel safe. Because safety is not just about having your needs met. It's about knowing, without conditions, that you're wanted, valued, and accepted. Not just when you behave, not just when you perform, and not just when you succeed. And when that kind of warmth is missing, even in a house full of people, you can grow up feeling strangely alone. And that absence of warmth doesn't shout, it whispers, in self-doubt, in emotional distance, in that one question: if I stop performing, will I still be valued? There's a strange comfort in talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about your past. No expectations, no assumptions, and no memory of who you were yesterday. Just a clean slate. And to a lot of people, this clean slate often feels more relaxing than being at home. Because at home, you're never just who you are in the moment. You are also your past. Every mistake, every weakness, every failure is constantly being reminded over and over again. A lot of the times, there's no bad intent in that. Actually, it is seen as guidance, and sometimes as concern, sometimes as a passing comment that lands heavier than expected. You've always been like this. You never focus. You failed last time too. These aren't just statements, these are identities. Because when you hear something repeated enough times, especially from people whose opinions shaped your childhood, it stops feeling like feedback and starts feeling like truth. And that's the weight of history. At home, you're never allowed to reset. You're the accumulation of every mistake, every failure of yours in the past. But outside, you're free from that narrative. A stranger doesn't know your worst moment. They don't carry a mental file of your past behaviors. They don't look at you through years of accumulated judgment. That's kind of a psychological relief, isn't it? You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to over-explain everything. You don't have to fight an invisible version of yourself that exists in the past. You just exist. And that is why conversations with strangers can feel lighter, easier, and even more genuine. Because there's no history to manage. There's no emotional debt. No pre-written script about whom you're supposed to be. But in many families, interactions are rarely neutral. They're layered. A simple disagreement is not just about the present. It involves past patterns. A small mistake isn't just a mistake. It's a confirmation of an older belief. A new effort isn't seen as fully new. It's often compared to what has happened before. And slowly, this creates a fixed image of you within the family. An image that becomes difficult to change with each passing day. Even if you grow, even if you improve, people here have the tendency to bring up your past over and over again. Why? Because a lot of people assume continuity. And this is why a lot of people are misunderstood at their home even when they're trying their best. They're always being seen through a lens that was built years ago. And breaking that lens is hard. Perception is slow to update when familiarity is high. But with strangers, none of this exists. You're not limited to memory. You're not put in a box. You're not always reduced to a worse version of your past. And this freedom can feel addictive. It can make you feel more open, more confident, more expressive, because for a brief moment, the burden from your past is no longer with you. You're free, albeit temporarily. When home becomes a place where you feel most judged, and the outside world becomes the place where you feel most free, the space that should feel the safest starts feeling restrictive, and the space that should feel uncertain starts feeling comforting. And this inversion changes how you connect to people. You begin to trust distance more than familiarity. You share more with strangers and friends than with family. You feel seen and understood by people who barely know you. 5. The effect on Indian children long term. When you grow up in an environment where warmth is inconsistent, expression is controlled, and your identity is shaped by past mistakes, you don't just move on from it, you adapt to it. And with time, as we grow up, these adaptations become our personality. At first, it looks harmless because we look more responsible now. We become aware of other people's moods. We avoid unnecessary conflict. We become hyper aware of tone shifts. We start reading between the lines. We overthink simple interactions because in a lot of houses, emotional reactions get unpredictable responses. And this unpredictability trains our vigilance, hypervigilance, in fact. Then comes the deeper layer. You begin to associate love with conditions, approval with performance, peace with silence. So now you hold back your opinions to avoid friction. You prioritize other people's comfort over your own. You apologize even when you're not wrong. You even hesitate to ask for help because help feels like becoming a burden onto someone. And slowly this creates a version of you that's easy to get along with but difficult to know. You've learned how to function optimally but not to express yourself. So now you struggle in relationships by thinking that people only care for you if they have ulterior motives. You start to feel uncomfortable when you see kind people. You start doubting their intentions. You may even test people unintentionally, not because you want to hurt them, but because you're trying to confirm if they will still stay. Stability here feels unfamiliar because we are not used to it. So, unconditional love starts to feel suspicious. So that voice never leaves you alone. That voice isn't random. It's built from repeated experiences where your value felt dependent on how well you performed, behaved, or avoided problems. And you carry this into spaces where it's no longer required. You treat supportive people like they might leave. You treat yourself like you're still being evaluated, even when you're not. And this is how childhood environments echo into our adulthood. In choices, in reactions, in the way we see ourselves. But here's an obvious truth that everybody overlooks. These are learned patterns. That means that if they can be learned, they can be unlearned as well, by being mindful of our actions and our words. Because the moment you become aware of what shaped you, you also gain the ability to reshape how you respond. We were never taught to save our best versions for the people who stay. Nobody told us that the ones who see you at your worst, who wake up with you, who eat with you, and who fight with you, actually deserve our best selves. We mastered the art of performance for people who will forget about us by next week. This isn't about blame. We learned this from our parents, and they learned this from theirs. But this self-destructive cycle is never going to break until we see it for what it is clearly. So today, let us make a promise to ourselves. A promise that we're not going to treat our families like strangers, and strangers like family. Hey, now before you leave, can you just drop a like and leave a comment? So that's gonna help my channel grow a bit. It's gonna help with the algorithm and stuff. I'd really appreciate it if you did that.